you everyone for being here. I'm going to get us started. First of all, thank you all for coming. Just some housekeeping. We have restrooms off to my right. So if anyone needs a restroom, we have food in the back, sponsored by Istanbul Shish Kebab, which is a local Palestinian-owned restaurant. So please leave them a 5-star review and enjoy the food. We are so lucky to have our wonderful panelists here. So this event is hosted by Free Palestine Charleston. Free Palestine Charleston is a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-faith organization dedicated to the liberation of Palestine using an anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist framework. If you do not already, you can follow us on Instagram at Free Palestine CHS and visit us on freepalestinechs.org. I'm going to start by introducing our panelists. First of all, this panel is going to be moderated by, starting to my left, Jennifer, who is a case manager who works here with refugees here in the Low Country and also has plans to go to Palestine, to the West Bank side, to do some work on the ground there. Next, we have Rana Mahmoud. She is a Palestinian American traveling critical care nurse and a wound care nurse. She comes to us from Tampa, Florida. She has made 2 trips to Gaza since the genocide began, and most recently came back in April 2024 with the Palestinian American Medical Association, where she did a lot of work training local nurses in wound care. Next, we have Dr. Mike Mallah. He's a Palestinian American double board certified trauma surgeon and critical care intensivist here in Charleston. He's also the director of the global surgery program here. He, in his career in global surgery, has traveled to 55 countries and operated on 5 continents. And he has traveled to Gaza in March 2024 to do humanitarian disaster relief work, also with PAMA, the Palestinian American Medical Association. Next, we have Amani Kanan. She is a Palestinian American physical therapist and licensed practitioner nurse who also traveled in Gaza in April 2024 with PAMA. And she's coming up to us today from New York. Joining us virtually, we will have Dr. Mark Perlmutter. He is going to be joining us at some point in the hour because he is currently testifying to the ICJ. You might have seen his interviews with Democracy Now! And CBS, but he's an orthopedic and hand surgeon in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. He's the president of the World Surgical Foundation and a past president of the International College of Surgeons. He's done disaster relief work in the aftermath of 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, the earthquake in Haiti in 2010, and he has traveled to Gaza in April 2024 along with Rana and Amani, and upon his return has been very vocal against the genocide in Gaza, doing multiple public appearances and testifying to the ICJ. So this is going to be a question-answer moderated panel, moderated by Jennifer, and we are going to, at the end, have you pass any questions you have in writing on index cards. If you haven't grabbed an index card, they're up at the check-in desk, and then hand them over this way to Baji, raising her hand. And then we will select a few questions from the audience to ask our moderators once we're done with the panel format. Okay, so I'm going to pass it on to Jennifer to start with our questions.
Thank you. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you, Savannah, for those introductions, and thank you all for being here. Thank you to our panelists for traveling here and taking time out of their busy weeks. Right before we get started, I would like to let Dr. Mallah say a couple words just about some community agreements as we're all here in this room.
So I appreciate you all being here, spending the afternoon with us. I want to quickly just say thank you so much to everybody who's been involved in the Free Palestine Charleston chapter. It's just incredible to see this group and what you guys have organized. So I'm very, very touched by it. I did want to start this by making sure that we are all in alignment in this space. And these are things that I will dare say we feel very, very strongly about. So I have to say this extremely harshly. We are all here to affirm love and to affirm our common humanity. And if you are not in agreement with that, then please do not stay in this room. So you are consenting, that's why we're here. You are consenting. We're going to share probably some of the most vulnerable experiences that we have all had, as well as the patients and the families that we have all encountered. And so if you are in this room, you are consenting to not audio record or video record any of this, with the exception of the people who have been given permission, okay? If you do that, it is just such a huge, egregious violation of everything that we are here for and about. And so if you do that, you're not consenting to do that in this room. And if you are, please leave, okay? And then lastly, I will say that we are here to affirm and increase our mutual understanding. So that is why we're here. If any of those three things you are not 100% clear about, then please leave the room now with no judgment. And I'll pass it off to Rana.
Thank you, everyone, for having us here. I do appreciate the support. I appreciate all your hard work. My name is Rana Mahmoud, as Stefana introduced me, and I'm a critical care nurse. And yes, I have been to Gaza twice during this genocide. I wanted just to comment on this photo that you all see on this projector. This photo was taken by me in April of 2024 this year, as we entered Gaza and we were wearing our vests. So everyone identify us as we're doctors that are here to help out. So a lot of the children would greet us by saying hello, hello, and they would follow us around, minus this child. Every child we encountered, they would either greet us, ask us for money maybe, ask us for candy. Well, they were just very friendly, or they would try to have a friendly conversation with us or follow us around, minus this child. I don't know this child. I don't know his name. I don't know his age. I don't know anything about him. I spoke to him in Arabic. I asked him his name. I asked him his age. Offered him money. I offered him candy, and he refused to speak with me. I took a photo of him and I asked him to smile, but this is the face he gave me. When we say a picture is worth a million words, I believe this picture speaks for itself, and I leave that to your imagination.
Thank you, Rana. Okay, so if we're all ready, we're just gonna, jump right into these questions. So just for starters, I would love for you all to tell us about yourselves, your careers, and ultimately what led you to the decision to go to Gaza.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here. My name's Amani. I'm a physical therapist. I've been in the career for like 14 years. I'm Palestinian American. And when the war happened, seeing the images that were released out of Gaza they were very distressing. It was very hard for me, very difficult to watch those photos and not do anything. Especially that I'm a Palestinian American who lived part of my childhood in the West Bank, so I got to experience firsthand the violence that was taking place there. So I know what it was in Gaza. It was 10 times, maybe a million times worse. It became very critical for me to join PAMA. When the opportunity came by, I was so honored to be part of the team and be able to go to Gaza, help out medically, and come back and share the experience that I've witnessed.
So my real name is Muhammad Muhammad Sulaiman Ibrahim al-Mallah, which is a lot, especially if you grow up in Eastern North Carolina. But I grew up in Eastern North Carolina, and all of my best friends growing up were all devout Southern Baptists, and it's interesting because like my co-panelists that are live here, I'm Palestinian American. I grew up. Since I came to the U.S. when I was 5, and so I grew up with all these ideals of what America is: democracy, equality. We're all created equal, right? These are all foundational things that we learn very, very young. And so those are all things that I believed and still honestly want to believe. And then as the situation unfolded more recently, and we'll talk about how I believe it didn't start on October 7th, but as the situation unfolded, all these things really started to not sit right with me. Like, what are we, I thought everybody was supposed to have a right to speak, and everybody had a right to be heard, and everybody had a right to pursue happiness, right? The right to pursue happiness. And I didn't see that, and I couldn't reconcile that, and I felt like I had to do something. I think a lot of people probably in this room feel like they have to do something. And for me personally, as someone who had a skill set of surgery, that was my skill set. Everybody has their skill set. I wouldn't be able to talk to you right now so nicely if these people didn't have this lovely skill set. So I needed to figure out how to use my skill set to do something, and that's what I chose to do, and that's why I went.
I've been a nurse for over 20 years, and the last 7 years I've worked primarily trauma and wound care. And as the genocide started October 7th, I had been to Gaza prior to the genocide, so I was already attached to these people. And then when the genocide started and witnessing everything that was going on in the social media, it was humanity calling. It was the guilt feeling inside of me calling me to go to Gaza. It was the mother feeling that I have inside of me seeing these children. Everything inside of me felt the need to go and help out. But I know, like, going there, it wasn't just help out for medical needs. We went there to help out for moral support and medical support, more or less.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm just going to give you guys some statistics of some sorts before the next question. Israel's genocide in Gaza has resulted in a counted death toll of over 40,000 individuals. 14,000 of those are children. And according to Lancet and new statistics, it's likely closer to 180,000. Per the United Nations, over 91,000 people have also been injured. Can you guys describe for us what you saw in Gaza, and how was your experience unique compared to your prior clinical experiences?
So I think, as was previously said, I've operated in a lot of places in the world. I've operated in my personal story, which we won't get into here, but my personal story compels me to kind of do this kind of work. I've always kind of wanted to do this kind of work. And so I've operated in Botswana, I've operated in Ecuador. I go to Ecuador fairly regularly, and we have a truck that we have a mobile operating room, and we go to like the jungle and find people who need help and try to do our best for them. So I am no stranger to operating in a low resource environment. This situation was completely different for me. It was the first time I had ever been in an active war zone, but the complete collapse of any sort of system. I mean, I didn't ever really appreciate, for anybody who's in the audience who's a healthcare worker, you understand there's a culture within a hospital, but for all of you in your relative jobs, there's kind of a way of working and relationships that you set up with the people at your work that allow you to progress your agenda. And in Gaza, yeah, there was low resources, and yeah, so there's shortages, but that wasn't the issue. The issue was the complete and total collapse of the system, of all of those norms and those relationships and kind of those ways of working. And you can say that that also happens. I mean, for anybody who's local, I suspect most of you are local here in Charleston, we just had some flooding recently, and that kind of strains the system, right? But even in that scenario, you know that like nobody intended to flood Charleston. Like for all of us, when we went, you're driving past miles and miles and miles of all of the solutions, all of the medicines and the antibiotics and the gloves and the soap, and the food. You're driving past all of it on trucks, and we all saw it, just miles of trucks. And then you go through Rafah, and then there's nothing. And like you have somebody who needs your help, and you know the solution. I could literally ride my bike to the solution, and somebody is just preventing that. All of us, I hate to say it, myself included, we are complicit in preventing that stuff from entering, because that's how our government has chosen to represent us. That's the difference, that I've never felt that in any other context. I knew that there was limitations and poverty and low resources, and those things are all sad. But the difference was this was intentional, and I still can't get over that.
For me, I've been to Gaza May of 2023, which is basically about 5 months prior to the genocide starting. And at that time, I was in the West Bank and Gaza. And you probably all know that Gaza has been under blockade for the last 17 years. So when I went there, May 2023, I already witnessed lack of resources. They were already under devastation. But as of October of 2023, so you're already drowning, and now there's nothing. Complete nothing. They already lacked resources. They already lacked medical treatment. They were already making nothing out of something. Like the piece of gauze or the Band-Aid, they'll make something out of that. They were already reusing oxygen tubes and nebulizer tubes, and they already lacked water resources at that time before the genocide. Now we're talking about the worst devastation that you could ever imagine. And right now we're talking no water, no electricity, your basic life needs, the minimum that you could have is electricity and water is not even there. It's not there. If you guys go camping, you have no phone service for an hour or two, you'll probably freak out. These people have no internet service 24/7, no electricity 24/7, no water to wash your hands, no soap, no hand sanitizer, no gloves, no medication to treat chronic diseases. So the people that are diabetic or hypertensive or suffer from cardiac issues that they need their routine medication, they're not getting any of that. None of that. You send off your children to school. School just started. A lot of you sent off your children to school and you said goodbye to them and you took the picture of the first day of starting school. They don't have that. They don't have any schools. They don't have any hospitals. All the hospitals, all the healthcare system have been collapsed. They have all been under attack.
Okay. As we all know, we live in an age of social media, and we have been able to watch this genocide unfold through social media platforms. So my question for you all is, how has the public health crisis in Gaza evolved from trauma to starvation to infections? And in addition, the psychological trauma, mass societal trauma?
So like they were, Rana and Mohana just explained to you guys, like the blockage of the aid that was entering had caused like a tremendous lack of resources. You saw like the minute we entered, I was prepared that the situation is bad, but I never thought I was like a nightmare. It was a nightmare that I couldn't wake up. Like I said, this can't be happening in 2024. There was amount of kids that were walking around the hospital barefooted, seeking for their next meal was unbelievable. The amount of people, like every angle in the hospital was taken by a family as a shelter. Like the hospital did not, like I'm used to the modern health, like in America, we have everything. A hospital's a place where people go we save lives, you know, but like in Gaza, it was a shelter for people. And it was a place where there was thousands and thousands of people, not only living there, but like injured, seeking help. The lack of water, like I've never treated so many people without washing my hands because there was no water to wash my hands. Like that's basic. Gloves, there was no gloves. And when we entered, we were allowed to take in a certain amount of things, but we were limited on what we could take. Like even that was monitored and we were restricted on what we could take in. And we were just trying to take in like things like I've taken in like 300 pairs of shoes to put on the kids because as a therapist, like I can't have somebody walk around barefooted. Like I have to put a brace or something on them. And that was even limited. And it was just a drop. Like those 300 shoes might seem a lot, but it was a drop in the sea for the amount of kids there. People were hungry. People were tired. People were displaced multiple times, had no homes, no school, no doctor appointments, no vaccination. It was very distressing and extremely devastating to see.
I'll tell you that I think people like me and people who have either gone or are very, very close to this subject almost hesitate to talk about it. Like, even now, I'm having like an out-of-body experience because I'm asking myself, like, what else is there left to say? What else is there left to say? What other meetings need to happen for people to affirm your basic humanity? And yet, like, in feeling that, I think that my co-panelists would echo this. After having seen what we've seen and the strength of the people that we encountered, like, I have to be here. I have to be talking to you. I have to use these words. I mean, as a surgeon, whenever I've said this in a speech once, I said that the state literally gives me a knife and lets me put it on a person. And in any other context, that's a felony. It's true, right? So it's not an easy thing. Forget about Gaza, just putting a knife on a person. It's not a simple thing. It's a lot of weight in that. And when you do that, you spend your entire life dedicated to that moment, right? And then right before you do it, you take the best agents that we have to sterilize the skin, and you make your incision on that human. And you're intentionally hurting them in that moment, the hope of healing them. And your incision, you sterilize it because you want to make sure that it doesn't get infected. And surgical site infections is one of the things that surgeons think about a lot. Every single incision I closed got infected. Now, am I a shitty surgeon? Every single one. And in surgery, when an incision that you've closed gets infected, you open it. That's what you do. You open the incision so the bacteria drains out. I stopped closing all of my incisions. I left all of my incisions open. So the evolution of the crisis, I mean, what does that do to you as a provider? Trying to do your best in the face of all of this, in the face of, like I said, the solution is just 15 minutes away. I can ride my bike to it. And we are, I mean, at the time I went, we were 6 months in. Now we're 10 months in.
So all of you are probably gone to an urgent care or hospital at some point in your life. And the European hospital holds about 250 beds. Just answering your question about public health and psychological needs, you could throw that out the window. Like literally, there's no such thing. There's no public health and there's no psychological need because at this point, they are in survival mode. They don't have their basic need. We all probably heard of Erickson and Floyd and there's no such thing. You could throw that out the window too because they are in survivor mode. In order for them to survive, they just need the little bit of water, the little bit of food, maybe a little bit of medical treatment. But again, they don't have any of that. It's very seldom to come by. So the typical hospital you guys seen, you walk into the hospital, someone greets you, asks you to sign in, they take your vital signs, they ask you about your chief complaint, and they treat you from there. Well, that's not what we saw at the European hospital. The European hospital had turned into from holding 250 people to about 15,000 people right now. And is no longer a hospital. We referred to it as a refugee camp. That refugee camp did not just host 2 patients, they also had civilians there. Civilians that lived in that hospital, a family of 4, a family of 10, a family of 20 people live in a chair-size space, and they're probably not lying down. They're probably sleeping, sitting up because they don't have space. A mother of a 4-year-old sleeping at the stairwell with maybe just a sheet covering her to give her a little bit of a privacy, and she's wearing her hijab all day long. She cannot take it off because she has no privacy, and she feels secure sleeping at the stairwell of that hospital, and you cannot get her to go anywhere else. So the hospitals that you guys used to seeing is not in Gaza, and they have very limited resources to the point that we have to reuse everything. And we know we're probably delivering a disease to them. But the best we could do is clean that scissors and reuse it for 100 other people, because that's a one-time use object that we only supposed to use it on one person and throw it away, because that's what we were taught here as healthcare providers. But we can't do that because we only have one of it, just one. And then we have to reuse, constantly reuse objects. I used my gloves on maybe 20, 30 patients. That's when I ever had gloves and used them. And then I didn't have soap to wash my hands. I had a pocket hand sanitizer, so that probably saved me with a little bit of hygiene. But there is no healthcare system. There are no hospitals in Gaza. It's a catastrophe. There are no healthcare providers. Remember May 2023, they were already suffering. And then I went January of 2024. They had very limited resources. Again, we're talking to the bare minimum.
I want to add real quick, because what Rana just said reminded me of like walking through the hospitals, and want to hopefully make this, hopefully allow you to visualize this. So every inch, every crevice of the hospital is packed with people. I mean, if you imagine here, somebody living here, and I'm not exaggerating, somebody would be living right here. Maybe several people would be living in this area right here, and in that one, and in that one. And as you walk with your vest, you're identified as a provider. People are so desperate because their loved one has somebody who is needing an orthopedist or a vascular surgeon or some other provider, a physical therapist, and you're walking, they don't know because there's so much chaos and people, they will just grab you. They'll just grab your arm and say, "Are you so-and-so? Please help us, please." And you're just trying to walk from the ICU to the operating room. And I'd say this because it's hard to describe this to somebody who hasn't seen it. I swear I'm trying. But I wrote a chapter on mass casualty disaster management, on how do you handle a catastrophe. I wrote, my name is on that. And you can literally go print it out and shred it and flush it down the toilet, because everything I said doesn't apply. Like, how do you handle what she just said? Thousands of people trying to get care and seek shelter in a small hospital. Everybody's trying to eat. Everybody's trying to go to the bathroom. Everybody's trying to advocate for their family member. How do you manage that? You just, like, there's no system. There's no way to even, one of the first things you do is you set up a perimeter. Right now, if there's a mass casualty event, I'd throw you guys all out. I'd set up a perimeter, and I'd tell them, only let people in who absolutely need to be in here. But how do you do that when there's thousands of people inside the hospital, and they can't go anywhere? It's a closed. I mean, you could run all of Gaza if you're like a fit person. You could run all of it. Where do you tell them to go? How do you manage that?
And I know maybe a lot of you are wondering, why are they in the hospital? Like, why don't they go somewhere else? There's no place in Gaza that's safe. And I think like they have this thought that it could be safe for them to be in the hospital. But like time has shown us and proven it multiple times that it's wrong. Like there's no safe place in Gaza. So that's why it's overpacked with all these people and the families.
Thank you. I want to focus on that a little bit as we go into our next question. Rana mentioned the woman that was more comfortable sleeping at the base of the stairs in the hospital versus outside the hospital. The United Nations reports that 500 healthcare workers have been killed in Gaza since October, in addition to 168 journalists and humanitarian aid workers. As of last month, 310 medical workers have been detained or disappeared as of the end of last month, sorry. The World Health Organization counts 492 attacks on healthcare. What is the perspective of your Palestinian colleagues in Gaza, and was there ever a point where you felt targeted being a healthcare worker or within the hospital itself?
I never once was fearless when I was in Gaza. Not my first trip, not my second, not my third. And if you would ask me to go now, which I'm trying to, I never once felt like I was fearful for my life. Am I being targeted? Yes, most likely. Most healthcare providers are targeted in Gaza. And we have witnessed that. We have witnessed many physicians that have been targeted in Gaza, and they're not fearful for their lives either. Do I advocate for healthcare workers to go and help out? Yes, please do. Have I witnessed many healthcare workers that come to work every day and they have nowhere to go and they sleep at the hospital, and this is where they sleep, this is where they work, this is where they cook, this is where they clean, this is where they live? Yes, I have witnessed that. I'll let Mohammed and Amani elaborate on that.
Like, honestly, the healthcare workers that I encountered with were like told me that they still want it, like they know they're deliberately being targeted for saving people's lives because they don't want the lives to be saved. And they will show up to work every single day, hungry, not being paid, voluntarily. They're one of the most incredible, creative, brilliant healthcare providers I've ever encountered with. Like, these people will, so dedicated, they'll show up to work hungry, displaced, worried about their families, not getting paid, just for the main like cause of like, I want to help people and save them. It's just so, like, it's just a beautiful thing to see, like, that people do genuinely care about others and knowing that they're not safe to do that.
So I spoke to, for those of you who don't know, El Shifa is the biggest hospital, not in Gaza, but in all of Palestine. I was in the north part of Gaza. And when I was there, it had already been bombed and basically cleared out by the Israeli military. And so when I talked about earlier about the collapse of the system, you have people who are being shuffled all over the place and smattering of colleagues in different places. And I spoke to 2 residents who were at El Shifa and came down to the European, which is in the south part of Gaza where we were. And the 2 residents was like, one, people don't sleep there, just stay awake until 3 in the morning. It's a very Arab thing to do. But we're like 2 in the morning hanging out, drinking tea, and I don't know how we got into it, but they told me that they were in the hospital, working in El Shifa, taking care of patients at the bedside, and they each got phone calls on their phones, private cell phones, from obviously it's the Israeli military, asking for them by name, saying, hello, Dr. Mala, you need to leave the hospital right now. Full stop. If you don't, something will happen. And so I'm just trying to, I mean, even though I was there, like, I know it's going to be like hard to imagine the scenario, because even I was there and I can't imagine the scenario. Like, I'm round in the ICU all the time. Standing in front of my ICU patient who's on a ventilator, and somebody tells me, you have to leave your patient. It's like everything against what you trained for over a decade. You can't leave your patient. And so, but how are people going to react? And they literally, that was the scenario that happened to them. And some people didn't make it, and some people left, and some people got, I had 2 other residents who were not El Shifa, but they basically, in vivid detail, told me how they were abducted and tortured. And then they made it out. That's the scenario that they faced. And they can't leave. I'm here, obviously. I live in a bougie apartment and have this nice community space. So I have resources, but they can't leave. But for me, I think part of the question was, were you afraid? And we had this conversation earlier, and this is actually a testament to how women are much stronger than men. But I was terrified going into it. Once I got there, my psychology changed. But when I was here, prepping my brain to go, because it wasn't a reality to me. Even now, as I'm telling you, it's like watching a movie. I would go through these, my brain would flip back and forth from being totally fine to just zoning out. I was sitting and brushing my teeth, and I'd be watching the water, and then I would notice that for 5 minutes I had paused and just was watching the water, because I was contemplating I love my life. Do I really want to die? And I knew that I could, and I was very afraid. I would, even on the plane ride to Cairo, I would alternate between being fine and just crying. But as soon as I got there, and as soon as I started to know the people there, all my fear went away. And even now, it's fundamentally changed something in me that I literally do not care. There is something that is so much more important than your life, I promise you.
Thank you, guys. I want to talk a little bit more on the dehumanization aspect of this genocide. We see it frequently when we watch the news and see photos coming out of Gaza. How have you all seen dehumanization manifest on the ground?
Again, it's the same things, basic things. Resources of water was so limited that people sometimes were drinking sewer water, and that could cause illness and infections that they don't have the treatment. They don't have the basic antibiotics for that. The sheltering, all around in the camps, and the infection being so high, the poor sanitary conditions that they lived in. The lack of food, when somebody's injured, it takes a full team. The surgeon's going to operate, then you have the nurses that are going to care, then you get them to physical therapy, to rehab, then you have the follow-up. They have none of that. They don't have the proper nutrition to even recover from the injury, let alone that they're at risk of it getting infected and making things worse. The amount of children I saw that had amputations, I still can't get over that. Some of them being bilateral amputated, no limbs. Some have lost their left leg, some have lost their right leg. The amount of mothers that I saw grieving for the loss of their children, and children walking around with no parents, is something I think I would never get over. It's beyond what you can imagine. People being hungry, moms feeding their kids, and I've asked families there, what's the longest you went without food? And some of them told me a little over 24 hours. And imagine when a parent leaves their kid, and there were kids that were walking around going to bring food for their parents, little kids barefooted, walking around with what they had was beans or whatever that was given to them. And in the process of doing that, they still were getting targeted by F-16s and airstrikes and all kinds of things, and coming in and not being able to get treated. And if they did, there was a big chance that they weren't going to survive. So the chaos was like it was one thing after another, and every time you thought you saw the worst, the very next minute you saw something way worse than what was going on. It was something anybody can unbear. Like, I don't know how the resilience of the people there, I just don't know like how to explain it, because it's something like their basic needs of being a human has been taken away from them, and they're still trying to survive and, you know, make a day pass by and hug each other and stay close and grieve and be safe and eat. And I just, it's very hard to explain the situation.
Yeah, I want to add, you talk about amputations, pediatric amputations, the highest concentration of pediatric amputations since they have started keeping records. The data, 100% of children have experienced trauma in the Gaza Strip. That's according to UNICEF. 100%. All of the children have lost a year of education. And so the question is, dehumanization. What is dehumanization? The opposite of humanizing someone. What does it mean to be human? I mean, if you go back and you look at the science, the most basic thing is survival. Food, water, shelter. That's it. That's like number one thing, right? Forget about like the nice clothes that we wear, right? And then love, right? The need, that's number two, the need to be loved, to be understood, and the need to love. And you have literally a government that is not, I'm not stretching these words. These are not even my words. They literally said no food, no water, no electricity, and 70%, I think the actual number is 63%, if you want me to be accurate. Somebody questions the number. 63% of the buildings in northern Gaza, which is the top half of Gaza, have been totally bombed. So this is being funded by all of us. We just gave another $20 billion to the government that is executing this with weapons that are manufactured partly here in Charleston. I mean, I'm just saying the facts. So, yeah, dehumanizing, I mean, it is bizarre for us to, like, again, talk about it, and I'm sorry to point this out, but there was a child in this room that was crying earlier, and it actually made me smile, because I know that that's not coming from the same place where the children were crying from in Gaza. That's humanizing.
We keep emphasizing on water, electricity, and those are the basic life needs. But there's a little bit more than that. A lot of females require feminine pads. That's literally basic. We run to the store and get them. But even as simple as that was unavailable to them, and they actually had to cut their hijab to make feminine pads. I've witnessed so many females come to the emergency room during a mass casualty, and they probably have a plastic bag that they're covered with because they had no clothes on. And modesty is number one. As a Muslim woman, we need to be covered and we need to be modest. And these women, 99% of Gazan females are covered. These women walked in with plastic bags on them, if anything, maybe nothing on them.
And I have to tell this story because I think a lot of, I guess you guys would relate, but feel free to disagree. And I am sorry, this is a profound overshare, but I have a very small bladder. And so I'm actually being a little bit afraid to drink too much water, so I don't like to run off the panel. But I shared a room in Gaza with 7 other providers. So it's 7 of us in a room that is probably a little bit bigger than that space over there in front of the bathrooms, okay? We slept on the floor, like right beside each other, okay? And we were on a hall where there was about 10 other rooms that were equally packed with people, okay? In that hallway, we had 2 bathrooms that we shared. And so for the 2 weeks that I was there, I think I showered twice. And every time you're showering, you're like, crap, how am I holding up from being able to use the bathroom? Because there's only 2, right? Every time you needed to brush your teeth or every time you needed to pee, you had to wait, okay? You had to wait. And I've never really experienced that. Like even now in this room, like I probably would have to wait for like 3 minutes. But that was our whole entire 2 weeks was you have to wait. And that's to me not even the hard part of this whole story. The hard part is we were the lucky ones. I promise you, in Gaza, the children that she mentioned that would follow us and say hello, hi, how are you? They were all sleeping literally in tents made of sheets, like a plain bed sheet. And there was like extremely minimal access to a toilet. So the statistic that I heard come out of the United Nations was there was 1 toilet for every 500 people, which was what I last checked, which was about 4 months ago. 1 toilet for every 500 people. So you talk about the question about dehumanization, like forget about like going to the Bahamas and like, you know, the next vacation to make you feel like a human. I'm talking about peeing. And that's the scenario that they were facing at that time. And I don't even know, I think maybe even worse now, to be honest, I don't know.
He is bougie, by the way. He showered twice in 14 days. I showered no times, 0 times. I didn't have a shower. And when I tried to go take a shower, there was no water. So both trips that I was gone, that I stayed 14 days, I used baby wipes to cleanse. That was about it. And I did share a bathroom with 500 people, but he is bougie. Yeah.
Okay, we have heard nothing but deafening silence from our healthcare institutions, including academic employers and national societies such as the American Medical Association. So I guess I'm wondering, does this surprise you all? Is Palestine the exception, or is this an indication of a deeper fundamental problem in our institutions?
Does it surprise me? This whole scenario, I mean, it's obviously much more heightened now since last year, but this whole scenario is very schizophrenic. And what I mean by that is part of it completely surprises me, and part of it is like, oh, this is totally on brand. If you all are interested, there's a great book by Mark Lamont Hill called Except for Palestine, The Limits of Progressive Politics, and it's happening right now. So we are progressive and like everybody deserves equal rights, you know, we're all in it together, all of this except for Palestine. And he documents this very clearly with a lot of evidence that you can go read for yourself. So it does, in that regard, it does not surprise me because this is not new. But I think what does surprise me is kind of what I referred to earlier, is growing up with these values of what it means to be an American, of the right to pursue happiness, of justice, of dignity, of equality. All of these things, you know, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women, we should include you all too, all men and women are created equal and endowed by their creator certain inalienable rights, including the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is at the fabric of what is American. And I'm driving around seeing all these American flags, and this is what this is supposed to represent. And then you have a scenario where we're live streaming a genocide. And it seems like everybody's okay with this. I'm like, I mean, I know that's an extreme statement. I know everybody is not okay with this, but that's what is surprising, is you have people who you always expected they were going to be on the right side of history, and they're not for some reason. I was with one of my colleagues. For those of you who have not been to the International African American Museum here in Charleston, that should probably be what you do tomorrow. Because it's built on the former site of the slave port here in Charleston. And 50% of black people in the United States can trace their lineage back to this port, right? And it would be unusual for you to find someone now who would stand up and say, we're okay with slavery, it's fine. right? Everybody's like, oh, that was bad. We shouldn't have done that. That was a terrible part of our history. Should have known better. And I was literally walking around with my colleagues saying, why do we have to do this in the rearview mirror? Like, why do we, I don't want, I'm Palestinian, so now I'm speaking purely as a Palestinian. I do not want a museum in 50 years saying, oh, the genocide of 2023-24, we shouldn't have done that. Like, we should have been better than that. I don't want that museum. I just want it to stop now. Like, nobody wants that. I don't want to be remembered in that way. How have we not learned from this? That's what surprises me. We put up museums, and we have days, we have Martin Luther King quotes, but then it's all like empty. That's what's surprising. It feels empty. Before you move, I do feel compelled to say something. Yeah. I want to make sure that nobody leaves this room without knowing this is not opinion. This is fact. I'm reading you verbatim Article 2 of the Geneva Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Okay? In this present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in part or in whole a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group, such as killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. If there is any part of that that is unclear, please raise your hand. Or come, if you don't feel compelled to raise your hand, come talk to me privately after. So the whole conversation makes me crazy in my head. This is not political. This is not controversial. I just don't like genocide. Full stop. I don't care. I mean, yes, it's obviously affecting me personally because I'm Palestinian in this regard, but I'm not like okay with a little bit of genocide in Ecuador. I'm not like, okay, that's a little bit of genocide there is okay, but not in Palestine. Or a little bit of genocide against these other people over here, that's okay. It's full stop. I am not okay with genocide, full stop. And actually, there was a previous presidential candidate many, many years ago, who was asked directly during the debates, is there any scenario where you would put American troops in harm's way that didn't directly serve American interests? And his answer immediately was yes, to prevent genocide. That makes me happy to not only be an American, it makes me happy to be a human. How is that not happening? If someone can explain that to me, also please raise your hand or meet me after, because I'm going nuts with this.
If we could just pause for a second, Dr. Perlmutter has joined us, so we're going to get him up on the screen here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. Nice to see my old friends again. With polite disrespect, with no disrespect to Ted, but with polite disagreement, this is political. It's very political. And for you not to recognize that that is the root of the problem, and also the source of the solution, would be a huge mistake. It's through our politicians and through their education, and let them know the definition of genocide, to let them know that there's something called the Leahy Act, to let them know that a substantial portion of the United States is either Palestinian or of Jewish heritage, like myself, who finds this to be consistent with war crimes. For us to act collectively and not educate our politicians that there is a distinct difference between Zionism and the protection of Judaism would be a horrible mistake on our part. We've placed 5 medical students from Palestine in the United States in the last couple of months. Only 5. And when I asked all 5 deans of admission, well, why you? Why? Help me develop an approach to the other 200 medical schools so we can place the other medical students so that they can go back in 4 to 5 years and help us avoid the void in healthcare that's destined to afflict Palestine. And all 5 and 2 dental schools had only one thing in common, and that is that the deans of admission were Jewish. 100% of them were Jewish, recognizing the mistake that's going on. And all of us were told to keep it on the QT because of the politics in the university. One of them, UC Davis, would take 2 Palestinian students, but only if we assisted 2 Israeli students from getting in because of the politics. And so politics is local at the school level, it's politics at the state level, and it's certainly politics at the national level. And I'm just saying we have to focus on this. We have to educate people that it is okay to hate your government or another country's government, and love the people within it. It is okay to hate Israel's government and not hate Jews. And by converse, it's okay to love Palestinians and even despise what Hamas had done on October 7th. That they're all perfectly consistent. And as I said, I can wear my father's mezuzah around my neck and the kafaya that one of the other panelists gifted to me without any conflict whatsoever. The same way that Golda Meir wore hers together, who had a Palestinian passport. I think it is politics. I think that is the solution of our problem. Protesting genocide is important. We can't stop doing that. But collectively and individually, we have to approach politicians and share with them the mistake that they're making and to please consider falling on the wrong side of it, or the correct side of history on this.
Thank you, Dr. Perlmutter. We touched a little bit on this, but we now have Dr. Perlmutter with us, and if anyone would like to add additional, oftentimes neutrality is used as an excuse for remaining silent, but we know that there is no neutrality in genocide. How do you navigate a workplace that demands neutrality and punishes being political?
I think Mark could answer that.
So you broke up a little bit on that. We've just summarized the question for me.
How do you navigate a workplace that demands neutrality and punishes being political? In air quotes.
Oh my God, I deal with that all the time. In my hospital, I'm the only unemployed surgeon. So when I wear my Black Lives Matter pin a couple of months ago, and when I wear my Palestinian, pin on my scrubs, I get shit all the time. I had disruptive physician complaints against me. Because I'm potentially offending people. Right, well, fire me if you could, but you can't because I'm not employed by you. The chief medical officer finally said to me, I think what you're really giving us is the middle finger. And I go, diplomatically, yes. Right? Now, convert that to an employed physician who is 32 years old. He's got 3 young kids. He just has a mortgage on a 4,000 square foot house. And he's told to march in lockstep with whatever opinion letter was emailed out by the UNC legal department. But they're gonna shut up. They're not gonna voice their political dissent. The average person is scared of losing their job. The average person does not have financial reserves to lose that job. And that's really what dictates people's behaviors to a great degree, which is why it has to be done with a great level of sensitivity in how you approach things. I'm a throw it down your throat kind of person if you get in an argument with me, and you'll lose that argument. But I can afford to be that person. The average person can't be. And that has to, so you have to modify how you talk to people, and you have to modify how you bring it up. It is a much more delicate conversation in small groups of people or in a large group of people. If I speak to Jewish Voices for Peace, I'm speaking to colleagues who share my opinions. If I speak to CNN, I have to watch what I say because I want everything I say to be actually on the air and not edited out. Because it will be otherwise. And as my talk on CBS Sunday Morning was heavily redacted. You have to, there's an art of how you speak to people regarding this so that you can take baby steps through this process. And I think we all have to learn that art and become snowflakes that will eventually become an avalanche.
Yeah, so I feel like the analogy that I've heard, which I think is great, is people have always said, like, we glamorize Martin Luther King, and we kind of, I don't know if demonize is the right word, but, Malcolm X. But a lot of historians would say that nothing would have happened if it wasn't also for Malcolm X. So you have to have those voices that are out in the streets, protesting, yelling from the mountaintops, holding up signs. But you also have to have people that understand how to say things in the way that they won't get edited out of CNN and BBC, and say things in a way that people who might not necessarily be your colleagues or have your exact worldview are able to digest. Sadly, that puts pressure on the messenger, right? Like if you have people who are, enslaved trying to argue for abolition, now they are having to be slaves and having to articulate themselves well to an audience that's hostile. That's unfair, but that's also reality. And so you have to just understand the chessboard and play the pieces as they are.
And you have to play chess, not checkers here. Yeah. Your historical perspective is quite accurate, but remember, it took 100 years after slavery was abolished for there to be an Equal Rights Act passed. And the months that after it was passed was marked with horrible riots throughout the United States. And even during the Democratic Convention, of '68, there were horrible riots in Chicago. These are processes that take 100 years to turn around in an era where there was not social media. And with social media, things will become expedited. And there has to be a common voice to penetrate social media, because it's not going to be baby boomers that are going to make this change. It's going to be Gen Z and it's going to be millennials. And that's why Biden resigning was the most wonderful thing that happened to me this year, besides meeting two of those ladies on the stage. And because it opened the door to younger people taking control. And I'm praying that Kamala, who I believe will be our next president, will actually be sensitive to the plight of the Gaza. You don't know it now because she can't say so now because she has her ear down on a political turf. But I think that she will be, and I think that people in her government will be. And I think she'll succumb to the pressures of society, as Biden actually did. The 2,000-pound bombs did not get delivered only because of student protests. And so I think the power of social media and the power of younger people driving the bus here is going to not make this take 100 years. but it's not going to take 10. It's not going to happen in the next 10 years. Unfortunately, genocide will continue until the AIPIC and the large Christian groups that actually give them even more money than the AIPIC lose control. When their malinfluence is discovered and it's put under control, hopefully through term limits, only then are we going to make a difference. We have to have an organized voice that can compete with the AIPAC. Because right now, without term limits, every person who votes gets a ton of money from them, and that influences their opinions on whether they're with Israel or not with Israel. And that's a carte blanche support of Israel. Any politician today will equate anti-Zionism with anti-Judaism, 100%. Even though Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism. One is thousands of years old, and the other one, 1895, it was invented 50 years before Israel became a country. So if we can help promulgate the difference between the two, only then will we win.
Dr. Mads Gilbert talks about his work in Palestine as medical solidarity instead of humanitarian complicity. What do you believe is the role of healthcare workers in genocide, and what has called you to speak out?
As a healthcare provider, I advocate for justice, and I treat all my patients the same. Except in Palestine, like, you can't say that because that doesn't apply. They're not treated the same. They're, like I've mentioned, we've talked about it, like, and I'll repeat it again, the limited resources, that's not being like, they don't have the right medication and the medical equipment that's needed to save their lives. They don't have the hospitals are not equipped to hold that many people. So how do I advocate for their rights? By speaking to people, and that's the reason why I went there, is to help them and come back and share my experience with other people so I can advocate for their rights.
Oh, would you guys like me to move on?
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
My role is not a healthcare worker from now on. The one thing I noticed missing more than anything was the press. There were no independent journalists. And my role, and why you're seeing me today, is I had to assume that role. I'm very uncomfortable speaking in front of a camera, even my own phone. I'm very uncomfortable when CNN brought in their huge freaking cameras and more lights than I've ever seen in my life aiming at me. I'm way out of my comfort zone. But I have to become a journalist because there were none there. I have to be the voice of truth because it won't get out. And that's what the role that you're all sitting up there in the stage with me on. And I hope everybody who's in the audience who I can't see runs out and becomes part of. We have to advance the truth because those who go into that career are forbidden to be there. And I think the biggest role that we have in preventing genocide are to become journalists and to share with the world the actual truth of what we saw, and that it wasn't just side casualties of war. I have no trouble telling people, like the ICJ just an hour ago, that I think that Hamas has nothing to do with it, that I think that it's an excuse to kill the average Palestinian in a genocide. Because that's clearly the population that's being targeted. So our role has changed. We're all healthcare workers, but we have to assume the role of educator, of public educator, of journalist.
Thank you. I would like to use what you just said to go into the next question, Dr. Perlmutter. On your interview with Democracy Now!, you have cited that you have, in fact, seen a genocide and been a witness to genocide. And as we all know, the Jewish people have also been victim to one of the worst genocides in recorded history. How does your identity as a person of Jewish heritage inform your conviction of this?
I remember as a kid growing up, sneaking into under my dad's bed to look at his Playboys or to look at the shoebox full of pictures that he took during World War II. When World War II was over, he, as a Jewish physician, went into Auschwitz. And I still have sepia photographs of piles of dead Jews and the front end loader of a bulldozer getting ready to be dumped into a grave that the focal distance of the picture, that just blurs into the distance, a 100-yard trench filled with bodies, not laid out nicely, just dumped. And so I've seen photographs that my father wouldn't talk about of the atrocities that the Jews have gone through. But I also know that it's a tool. It's a tool used today by Jews to constantly advance the knowledge that they are always under threat for that to happen again. Of all the accomplishments that Jews have done in the world, ranging from medicine to Hollywood, is there a single museum to the accomplishment of what Jews have done? No, the answer is no. Only the Holocaust museums, right? Because we have to live in fear, and the AIPIC and groups like that only advance the imminent threat of the Jew being attacked again, when the truth is that the most dangerous place for a Jew in the world today is in Israel. That's the most dangerous place for a Jew to live today, is in Israel. And so it's the fear mongering that the never again can happen tomorrow. The conflict is that never again only means for Jews. It doesn't mean for other innocent populations. And to reflect on what I said back before, Zionism ignores that. Zionism argued for the protection of Jews in 1890 and up through the 1940s. Now it's just a political party's justification for a land grab at the expense of owning the land that Palestinians have owned for millennia. It's just a political ideology that justifies stealing land. That's all it's about. It doesn't mean anything else. So the genocide of one population is used as a tool to justify the political land grabbing of today. Not that it should be forgotten. It was a horrible part of history. Tears come to my eyes when I see those pictures. It's horrible, but it's no less horrible than seeing an Israeli soldier shoot indiscriminately into a playground and laughing at it. For hope as well. Nobody thinks of the Ford Motor Company as complicit in the construction of the camps. It was. Nobody punishes Mercedes-Benz for building the motor turbines specifically for that purpose. Nobody had any trouble buying Bayer aspirin or letting the Bayer company buy the Monsanto company that feeds everybody that I'm looking at. Although Bayer is the company that Mendelssohn did all the experiments for on the Jews. And so we tend to forgive companies and the people who ran them. We tend to forgive von Braun because he put us on the moon, but he made the V2 rockets that killed 1 million people. So we learn to forgive and we learn to forget when good things happen out of it. And so that's why it's we have to play the slow game here, intelligently, the chess game, not a checkers game. And we have to develop strategies as a first step, because that's the only way it's going to work. We could always reflect on what happened with the ugly things in the past, but if it teaches us anything, it should teach us that we have to play the slow game, because it's not going to happen fast, and because that's the only way it's going to stay closed. And so I think, like any business, our approach should have a 1-year plan, 5-year plan, and 10-year plan to reverse what we're seeing, and recognize what tools we have to do that. And the biggest tool.
We all know what we are fighting against, but what are we fighting for? In your opinion, what does the recovery of the Palestinian healthcare system look like to you?
They're fighting for their homes. They're fighting for their land. They're fighting for their family. They're fighting for healthcare. They're fighting for educational system. I mean, I could only speak from my personal perspective. I lost my father 7 years ago, and I'm still grieving over him. And I was 40 when I lost him. And we experience losses in increments throughout our life. These people lost everything. They lost their loved one, their homes, their work environment, their health care. We came across many medical students or residents that have gone to school for 7 and 8 years. And right now, they can't sit for their boards. They're actually a volunteer at the healthcare system. These are all potential physicians, and right now they're working as an unpaid volunteer. They're fighting for that. That's what they're fighting for. They're fighting for education. They want to pursue their education. And again, when we suffer from losses, we suffer with increments versus these people, the Gazan people, the resilient people, they actually lost it all in split of seconds. But they're still fighting for it because they're resilient.
I think I think what they are fighting for and what we are fighting for may be two different things. I think if I was them, what I would be fighting for would be survival. It makes sense because that's the scenario that we all saw. But we here in this room are not fighting for survival, right? Like we have air conditioning and food in the back. But I think what we are fighting for is our consciousness and our humanity and our legacy. Because you look back at some of the stuff that we as humans have done, and I ask some of these generations, like, how did you let 9 million people die in gas chambers in Germany and Poland? Like, how did you allow that to happen? And part of me wants, I try to be patient with people, part of me says, okay, maybe they didn't know, like maybe there wasn't like all this social media and international news everywhere. So like maybe people didn't know. And there's some evidence that suggests that a lot of people in power did know. A lot of people did know. But the average person didn't know. But we find ourselves in like 2024 live streaming a genocide on Instagram, right? And I don't know how we're going to be able, I wonder if I ever have children, if I will be asked about this. Like what did you do? What did you do? And that's kind of my previous comment about there are some things that are more important than your own life. And I'm saying that fully recognizing that everybody can't hop on a plane and go into the Gaza Strip. But that's what we are in this room are fighting for. That's why I'm here on this mic. Because I'm asking you, what are you fighting for? In 20 years, when you're asked about these days, what is your response going to be?
I'm gonna backtrack a little bit and ask Dr. Perlmutter some of the former questions that we asked. Mostly based on an interview of yours that I saw, I would like to know your experience on if you ever felt targeted or threatened as a medical professional during your time in Gaza.
Not when I first got there. I felt targeted when we were there. The World Central Kitchen vans were bombed. And I knew about the deconfliction process that was designed to guarantee their safety. They had 7 people in each van. They had 7 Israeli SIMS cards. They knew the exact GPS location of the van even while it's moving. And the vans were several miles apart and hit 7 seconds apart. So that screams that they were targeted. Even with their baloney argument that they suspected one person in one van was Hamas, that doesn't mean you blow up 6 other aid workers. And so on that day, I emailed the American embassies, both in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. I got automatic responses back from them asking for communication. I also had an Israeli SIM card in my phone. I had asked for some guarantee that the American citizens that were with our troop would be garnished some safety. I never got a response back other than the automatic response. I repeated that email right before we left, because we're going to be on the same road known as the Road of Death, and that the World Central Kitchen vans started their trip on, not the one that they got hit on, and that was a long 20 or 30 minute drive. I didn't feel comfortable once we left the hospital compound heading back to Egypt. I thought it was reasonable that we might get targeted. The day after Schumer had berated Netanyahu on the floor of the Senate, I then called his office 4 times, spoke to his secretary twice, asking for him to intervene for our safety, and gave him all types of contact information, and then he nor my local senator got back to me. So I was nervous. It didn't affect what I did. I was told by many people, don't walk outside the hospital grounds with scrubs. Some of us did, I thought, not quite intelligently. And I was in fear for them because I've operated on healthcare workers that were shot. I told children that were specifically targeted by snipers. And so a healthcare worker is, I've already proclaimed my thinking that the whole system is designed to kill the average Palestinian, not a Hamas fighter. A dead Hamas fighter was just a benefit. And that the Palestinian was not an unfortunate collateral damage in this war, but I think the target of the war. And so healthcare workers are a justifiable target if that's what your goal is, which I do believe it is to this day. So I felt threatened, but not really other than a relatively intense threat during our exit from the hospital back to Egypt. I was actually relieved to get to Egypt. I didn't think I would be because I couldn't stand Egypt, but there was a sign of relief for me to get out of that room. So,
thank you. We're approaching our last couple questions. So the next one I have for you all is, many of us here have been watching for months as this genocide unfolds, and many of us are starting to feel hopeless. Yet we have no right to hopelessness when our brothers and sisters in Palestine continue to resist genocide and continue to simply try to survive. So my question for you all is, what gives you hope? in a time such as this?
For me, what gives me hope, seeing you all show up like to these events, like and all being here, that people are actually interested in knowing the facts and spreading the word and the awareness and the protests and the volunteers and the, like donating to the organizations, trying to get the help, everything that gives me hope. And I know from people in Gaza what they've told me, like every time, like right now, if this is recorded and it's going to be posted and it gets to people there, they get to watch it, it gives them hope that they feel that they're being heard, like they matter. There's somebody out there listening and advocating for them. So I think this is very important to have these events and like you talk to people spread the word and like let them know the real picture. Because a lot of people do not know. You might think like, okay, like it's clear genocide, but a lot of people don't see it that way.
Yeah, I think what you said was very apropos. A lot of times wonder, like, okay, I went for 2 weeks to Gaza, and maybe for you all sitting in the audience, you think, oh, like this guy went to 2 weeks and did all these surgeries and like helped all these people. But I really sit with myself and I say, what did I actually do? What impact did I actually have? Even if I did 100 surgeries, we just told you that maybe 100,000 people have been injured. So I ask myself, like, what impact did I actually have? And when I sat with that, it goes back to the question of like humanization. And I think what I hope my colleagues felt there, my Palestinian Gazan colleagues felt there, is that I and we are willing to walk away from all of this and maybe die because they matter. Because I'm not better. I'm not better than them. I'm the same as them. And if they believe that, then they can at least believe that there is hope. And what they asked me, one of the guys, Muhammad, he literally told me, he said, my education is my resistance. And people told me countless times, all we want you to do is just say what you saw. We don't want you to embellish. We don't want you to speak out. Just say what you saw here. Just be honest. And so what gives me hope is Safana and Shane, when you guys sat in my office. And I literally asked you guys, I said, why are you here? Like, you're not Palestinian. Like, it makes sense why I care, right? I'm Palestinian. I grew up hearing the story of my mom getting forced out and ethnically cleansed from our village, and my dad getting ethnically cleansed from our village. So it makes sense why I care. But why do you care? Why do all of you care? Why does Dr. Perlmutter, who is of Jewish heritage, care? It's obvious to me, because this is not an issue of Judaism or Islam or whatever national passport you carry. It's a very human question. It's obvious to me, but it seems like it's not obvious to the world. And then I come into this room, and I'm sitting in that room. That's what gives me hope. So thank you all.
What gives me hope is the Gazan people that I've met multiple times, and they haven't given up, so I feel like I owe it to them. The survival guilt that I walked away and they're still there. I owe them this. What gives me hope is that the children, they still shout and they still greet us, by when they see us, and they still feel like when we're around, we're like their security blanket, and they want to see the medical providers coming from the outside and helping them. What gives me hope is that recently, Palestinian root physicians are banned from going to Gaza. But I said to myself, if I can't go to Gaza, I'm going to bring Gaza here to the United States. And I have been associated with multiple organizations to bring Gazan children to seek further medical treatment. And we have been successful to bring countless children here to the United States to further medically treat them.
I think that Amani said it perfectly for how I feel, but I can only embellish it with one more comment that it's not important just to speak to other people and share your experience and your truth, but also encourage them to be part of a domino, and to make the target of the next person they talk to someone who has a voice, a politician, a letter to the editor, a social media post, even if it's a thumbs up on any politician who says, hey, I'm starting to think a little differently on this, to help steer the public opinion. And that's the long game I spoke of. I think that sharing with your friends and family is important, and your colleagues, but we also have to encourage them to carry that torch, and to specifically target people who can cast a vote in a closed room.
Thank you. Our panelists have created slides that they would like to share with us. And I would love for you all to tell the story that has stuck with you from these slides that we're about to show. And they're in order.
This is Bilal Abu Amrin. I met him back in January. He is 24 years old. And their home was bombed. And he lost his father, his 3 siblings, his wife, his child, and daughter. And he himself was found in the morgue inside of a bag, and he was declared dead. And his mother came to say goodbye to all her family members in the morgue. And as she said goodbye to her husband, to her grandchildren, and her other sons, she's over there saying goodbye to Bilal. And she witnessed that he's still breathing. And she started screaming out that Bilal is alive, Bilal is alive. And the surrounding people were claiming that she's being delusional because of the loss that she suffered. Well, the surrounding people are not healthcare providers. They're all civilians. Because the healthcare providers, they're basically none. The people that transported these bags to the hospital are civilians. It could be anyone. Because there was over 125 ambulances that have been targeted since the genocide started, and basically there are no paramedics that brings these injured or dead people to the hospital. So he was placed in the morgue up until his mom found him, still breathing. He underwent 23 surgeries till today's date, and he is live, and I basically talk to him on a daily. I want you guys to relate this back to you. If this would have happened here in the United States, this would have been a happy lawsuit case, negligence of a healthcare provider or negligence of whoever. He was found in a bag in a morgue, and he was actually declared dead, but he was still alive. And it's not just about a person that is still alive that was found in a bag. I can only imagine how the mother felt grieving through all her losses. Him himself, until today, he sends me pictures of his children and his loss, and and how he just cannot get over the loss of his wife, the love of his life, the children, his dad, his siblings. They have no home. He lost everything he's ever had his whole life, and he's suffering from severe depression. And he keeps telling me that he wished he would have died and his mom never really found him.
I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little personal. I'm a single mom, and I have my son that's 14 years old, and it's just been me and him for a very long time. So as I signed up to go to Gaza, I remember saying that, like, I knew, like, there was a big possibility that I wasn't going to come back and see my son again. So, like, I hugged him, I kissed him, and he told me, Mommy, like, what if you don't come back? Like, who's going to take me to school? Who's going to wish me a happy birthday? Who's going to take me places? But I know you're going to go and you're going to be fine. He gave me a letter. I had the letter in my vest, the vest that I wore that had PAMA on it, and that's covered in blood of this 6-year-old girl that came in. This is Leanne. She survived an airstrike after being hit. Their home was hit with an airstrike, and it was just her and her father. She lost her mom and her siblings. And I walked into the ER like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I hear the father just screaming, like, what did we do? What happened? What did we do? Why did I lose my wife? Why did I lose my children? Why us? Like, what, and where are my kids? Where's my wife? And every time they told him, like, a name of a child, they told him that he was dead. Like, he's dead. What about this one? He's dead. What about, like, he had a few kids, and every time they told him that, like, it just brought on more and more, like, screaming and, and yelling, and the girl sitting there crying for her mother. So I went in there, and she had a few fractures, and I put her, like, I carried her, and she hugged me, and she was just, like, yelling in my ear, Mommy, Mommy. And, like, just hugging her, thinking of my son, like, and I saw a lot of kids, like, but this is one girl, like, she stayed in my arms till 6 o'clock in the morning. And the reason she stayed there is maybe she was comfortable, yes, but also she was shivering, she was cold. I had no clothing. This picture was taken way after I got a hold of somebody that had an extra pair of clothes because when their homes get bombed, they leave, they have nothing. I couldn't find a way to comfort her, like, she's not gonna have a mommy. And it just made me feel guilty that I would be able to hug my son again. But this girl wouldn't have the ability to hug her mom. And she didn't clearly do anything. Why did she deserve that? And there are so many other stories for a lot of people, but I guess the one that sticks out the most is the one that we can relate to. But there were a lot of other stories that there's no way I could forget. I still, like, sit and, like, have those flashbacks of, like, the kids that I saw walking around looking for parents, and the parents that are walking around looking for their kids. Like, how do you ever get past that?
Oh, yeah.
I think we all need a minute.
Kirby, are you all good? Yeah. Okay.
This girl was a girl that was taken in the preoperative area right outside the main OR in the European Gaza hospital. I have this video on my phone, but I can actually hear her screaming in my head right now. She's 7 years old, and I don't know her name, but she came in after her house had been bombed. And if you go to the next picture, half of her leg here was missing. The main bone in the leg here, about a third of it was just gone, and you could see inside. You go to the next picture. She was doing this, grabbing basically anybody that would stand close enough. And there was no family around. And all she was saying was, please give me anesthesia. So 7 years old. Like, how many 7-year-olds do you know who even know what anesthesia is? So she was saying, please give me anesthesia. And we took her to the operating room, and the anesthesiologist didn't have any drugs to give her. So I'm a surgeon. I'm not a stranger to suffering. I see suffering all the time. I joke with my residents that I'm double board certified in SAD. But I'm also a privileged surgeon because I've never had a scenario where I didn't have access to anesthesia. I've never seen it. In my entire medical training, I've never seen it. So I'm watching this scenario unfold in front of my face, and this 7-year-old child is literally begging. And I'm in my scrub cap and my mask, so you can't see my face. And I'm a privileged surgeon. So I'm doing what I'm doing in front of you right now. I just started crying right behind my mask. But the anesthesiologist didn't do that at all. That's what stuck with me. He did not cry at all. He did not react at all. He did not have any sort of change of his face at all. And I'm assuming that he's seen this scenario so many times that maybe it's just like he's hardened to it. But I don't know if he didn't want her to see that he was afraid. If the only thing that he could do was to show her that. So in the absence of anesthesia, what I saw him do was start to sing to her. He sang instead of giving her drugs because he didn't have it. That's what he could do. And I don't know her name, and I never will, but she's never going to leave me.
Dr. Perlmutter, I imagine you don't have slides prepared, but is there a story that has stuck with you from your time in Palestine and in Gaza? Is he still on? Oh, we have to unmute you. Hold on. Or you're muted.
Sorry, I didn't want you to hear my dogs crying for treats in the background. But it's that time here. Um, uh, Picture yourselves looking at a 60-year-old cancer man. His ribs are palpable. His face is sunken in. His right eye is squinting permanently. Horribly malnourished. Picture bed sores on the back of his head. I've never seen him on the back of a head before, or ears. Equally bad bed sores on his sacrum and his heels and his shoulder blades, which I don't think I've ever seen before either. And then gaping open wounds on his legs. But the difference is that 60-year-old guy is not 60 years old. He's 31. The father of 2 young daughters that he doesn't think he'll ever see again. He's an orthopedic nurse in a hospital outside of our hospital that we were working in. I don't remember the exact hospital. I think it was the Kuwaiti hospital, but I could be wrong. And and the reason and how he got to us is the compelling story. The IDF soldier walks into his operating room, orders him to abandon the patient who's on the table. The anesthesiologist and the surgeon at gunpoint had to leave. Tamir refused to leave and had his knee blown across the room as a healthcare provider. He himself was operated on that day, missing so much bone that they had to fill it with the plastic that we used to glue in artificial joints, and no skin to clothes on either end of his leg. On the second day up on the ward, I had a disrupted incoming call. On the second day on the ward, the IDF comes and takes him prisoner and takes him to Israel, handcuffs him and blindfolds him for 45 days, gives him no health care to his wounds. He gets a juice box every day, sometimes every other day. And then after 45 days, when they discover that he's not Hamas, they drop him naked at the border. He crawls for 3 kilometers, is picked up by somebody and brought to our hospital. I think it was the Swiss Red Cross that was taking care of him for an extended period of time till he got out of a coma. When they said goodbye to him at the border, they gave him a rifle butt in his eye to say goodbye to him, and that exploded his eyeball on the right. And that's why this 60-year-old looking guy is blind in his right eye forever. He now has horribly infected wounds. And we saw him, I believe, it was clearly when he was done his bout of being in a coma. And this is how he's starting his life. Being tortured, being starved, all while a reward for delivering health care to an injured patient. It's my symbol for the dehumanization of a population. The best way to dehumanize a population is to deny it access to the things that have evolved over the last 100 years that make survivability tolerable. It's healthcare, it's clean food and water. And it makes it no surprise to me that the freshwater reservoir in all of southern Gaza was just bombed or blown up just 3 weeks ago, because it's all of the same thing. It echoes my belief that the best way to dehumanize a population is to kill the humans, and he's a perfect example of a wonderful human being who they intended to murder. Even after they recognized he wasn't Hamas, they still advanced his torture. Proof he wasn't Hamas is they let him go. They would have never let him go if he was. So that's my biggest memory of what I took.
Thank you guys for sharing these stories. An important question that I pose to all of you is, given your experiences in these stories And Rana, you've mentioned this already, but would you go back?
Absolutely. Most definitely. I would go back any day and time.
Can you expand on, I know we know the inability of Palestinian Americans to currently go, if my understanding is correct, into Gaza at this moment.
So basically, I traveled with PAMA, the Palestinian American Medical Association, the prior 2 times, and we were able to enter through the Egyptian border. And currently, the Egyptian border has been shut down. So we were advised, we were giving the new rules to enter from the new border is actually from Jordan. And the new rules were no Palestinian route is to enter Gaza. I don't know why, but these are just rules that were provided to us. And basically they have limited of our intake, what we take in there. Versus my first trip in January, I was able to take in 5 pieces of luggage and keep all that there. My second trip, I was able to enter with 30 pieces of luggage and keep everything in Gaza. Versus right now, I'm only allowed to enter with 1 phone, 1 piece of luggage, very limited food items, no medical supplies, no medication to enter with me. Those were the rules that were given to us.
I actually just wish that I would just stayed there. I feel like I would have served a lot more people. And back to the question, I'm sorry, you said where you, did you feel afraid or targeted or whatever? I didn't feel afraid. As a matter of fact, I prayed every night that if it was meant for me to go, that I would just go the last day where I've helped as many people as I could. Because the desperation of people wanting you to help them was unbelievable. And I just want to point out one thing, a lot of us get stuck maybe on the injuries that are happening from the airstrikes and all that. But there are the amount of people that are dying from things that could be prevented with just simply giving the right amount of resources, like an antibiotic, an upper respiratory infection. People dying from that. People dying from a DVT, from just being operated on and being in bed all day in a tent or on a mat, in the tent, not be able to move around. Children, that are dying from not only hunger, but I'm saying also the infections that are happening to their amputations, not giving the right amount of resources. So I think if we can not having the clean water, which is causing a lot of cases of the hepatitis go around, I think it's very important to advocate for the aid to go in because it's there. It's just not being allowed to enter. But if we can't do anything, that's the one thing that we could do. We could just advocate and push for the aid to enter.
I'll go back in a heartbeat. I felt more connected to everything that's important when I was there in a way that I don't feel here. And I'm forever changed. I'm forever changed by that experience. I'll never be the same. And I mean that in a good way. Everything that's important that you get stuck on in your life. Why we were joking around about how I'm impatient in traffic. Why are these people driving in the fast lane? And there's nobody over here. Why are you here? Doesn't make sense. But all this stupidity just melts away in the scenario that we saw, that we faced. And that's what the Gazans and the Palestinians taught me. I didn't go there and make a difference. They made a difference to me. And I was privileged to go and would be privileged if they would have me back. And I would wish upon you all the opportunity to go and experience the people that we experienced. When you had people who have, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Arabic culture and customs, and I was told from a Gazan professor back in college, he told me that in the desert, you wouldn't survive if you didn't work together. So if you have a guest from out of town traveling, or somebody is just kind of in the culture, you have to feed them, house them, give them water, give them food for 3 1/3 of a day. And you can't ask them where they came from, where they're going, or why they're there. It's part of the culture. And so it's very prominent in like Arab households. And so we arrived there, and they got to know us, particularly in the ICU unit where I worked, and they want to do this. It's part of the culture, right? They want to do this. And how do you invite someone over to your house and house them if you don't have a house? No? So the last day, they made it a thing, and they were like, we are going to do this for these people, for us. And I don't know where these people found chicken. Like, they found a chicken somewhere, and they roasted a chicken and had a lot of rice, and they gave it all to us. And I'm like, I'm a surgeon. Like, I'm a U.S. surgeon, like the highest paid surgeons. But that's like, how do you give when you have nothing? And they do it selflessly in a way that I've never seen. So I'm hoping that you have the privilege to experience that in your lives, to go to Gaza and meet these people, because they will change you.
Yeah, I'd go back in a heartbeat as well. I spoke to people today who offered me a trip, and the limiting factor, though, is I can't give a month. And Israel knows that. They know that 99.7% of volunteerism from the Western world is 1 week plus the attached weekends for travel. And that's been well recognized by the World Health Organization. Only one group requires a longer stay, and that's Doctors Without Borders. Every other group that's recognized by the WHO goes in for a week, which is why there is a requirement that you have to stay a month, because that's deliberately blocking non-Palestinians. Anybody who's Palestinian in their grandparents or parents is blocked from going in. I'm sure you'd be blocked if you looked like you could have been Palestinian. But even I would be blocked functionally because I can't give a month, not including the travel time. And then, of course, if I went a month and I wasn't allowed to take supplies with me at all, and I could only bring 1 kilogram worth of personal items that aren't clothing, then that totally prevents my ability to render health care. And they know that. So the answer is yes, I'll go back when the environment allows the delivery of health care again. Until then, the war crime continues.
Thank you. We're coming up on our last couple of questions. This question is of particular interest to me because I will be traveling to Palestine in November. But what advice do you have for people who want to go to Palestine to help to do the work?
Be ready to change your perception of life to the better. Just be ready. Have an open mind, open heart. You will not come back the same. And I mean that in a very good and positive way. Just be ready, be mindful. You will come back with a different perception of life. Completely different. Little things will matter to you. Just that water bottle that we're drinking, you're going to learn to appreciate that bottle. Not just the water in that bottle, but that bottle itself would serve multi-purpose. Just that water bottle would serve multi-purpose to you. So be ready and be mindful that you will come back with a different perception of life.
I would just say, go in with an open heart. Be ready to take in the message, and come out and raise awareness. You're doing it already, but keep doing what you're doing. Also, I just want to say something I thought that I was prepared, like going in, like I've watched the news. I was like, I've seen it all. Like I'm ready. Like I can handle this. I can handle the blood, the body parts, all that. But you're never prepared. And this could really drag you into a very dark place and can make you depressed, and it can make you like not want to be like helpless for yourself and for a lot of people around you. And that's not the point. You need to be able to like disconnect at one point and realize, have like a system for yourself that you know that you could cope. That's, you know, you have people around you that are, they're gonna support you, that you can go for them for help and support. Have things ready, because when you come out, it's gonna be a little challenging, because you're not gonna forget that experience.
And then lastly, before we transition into questions from the audience, we have all been called here in this room to be called to action, but I want to ask the panelists, what do you call everyone to do? What's your call to action?
I mean, there's so many things, and there's so much to do that I feel almost, it's like facing a massive wave coming at you. Right? There's so much to do that literally, if everyone in the room said, we're going to stop everything that we're doing and just commit our entire, days to the end of this genocide, it still wouldn't be enough. But that said, everyone can do something. And if everyone just did a little bit of something, then that would make a huge difference. And so it goes back to, like, what is your skill set? The most extreme thing is, like, actually go to Gaza. If you have a skill set that is useful, go. Because you will have this experience, you will be better, and you will have credibility to speak on an issue. But not everybody can do that, and I understand that. But there's tons of organizations that are working on this. There's tons of people that are working on this just to put together this event. I mean, you all are better to speak than I am. How many people did it take to put together this event, to host, to have this community, right? So there's a lot to do. But if you're some big shot executive and you don't have time for all that because you're busy in your job, the simplest thing that you can do is say Palestine. Just say Palestine. For the vast majority of Palestinian Americans who are in corporate America or political positions, they are targeted and afraid. And people have lost their jobs, they've lost elections, they've lost so much because it's somehow like not acceptable to be Palestinian or to say Palestine. In the news, I remember like 20 years ago, we were trying to do something on NPR, and in the actual code was written that you cannot say the word Palestine on NPR. Now, I actually downloaded the guidelines. And so I'm sorry, I know I'm being long-winded, but I feel passionately about this. Like, we don't need more women to talk about the issues that are facing women, because they've been shouting this for many, many years. More men need to stand up and talk about the issues that, like, women have to face in a discriminatory environment. Like, Palestinians have literally given their lives and jobs because they're Palestinian, just because they're Palestinian, not because they're Hamas or because they're, just because they're Palestinian. And so the call to action is, if you're not Palestinian, you need to say Palestine. You need to make sure that it's okay for people to be Palestinian and to say that I don't support the murder of Palestinian kids. That shouldn't be a controversial thing. That's the simplest thing somebody could do.
Learn to boycott. Boycott is very effective. It has proven to be effective. Spread the awareness. Yes, these events are great, but your social media is also great. I have paid advertisements on Instagram, just simple posts, they're non-political, just simple posts about injured children. Those are paid advertisement. but your social media, spread the awareness. Continue to post and repost and like the posts that it's about Gaza. Those are simple things that you could do. Also, call your House representative. The phone call takes about 2 minutes. Do that. Just continue to spread the awareness, and just like Dr. Mike said, please keep saying Palestine, wear your kufiyah, wear your Palestinian bracelets, whatever it takes. Just continue to say Palestine and continue to spread the awareness.
I'm still, I introduced myself as a poke you in the eye type person, and I'll close that way. I would be frank to the politicians through social media, because they all have staff that monitor it. And I would say, don't vote for this person unless they modify their position on killing Palestinian children. Call it what it is. You can't put the picture of that child who's, that the doctor had put up, who's missing half its leg, and have it not pixelated so badly in any type of legacy media where it'd make a difference. And I got kicked off of X because of my gratuitous gruesomeness of the photos that I put on. And that's purportedly the most liberal of social media. But a simple statement saying that so far this senator, our senator, my senator, is so pro-Israel that he's advancing the murder of Palestinian children. Call it what it is. And please consider not voting for him until they change, or her, until they change their position on this critical topic. It's a diplomatic way of saying, withhold your vote. To my co-readers, withhold your vote, because Palestinian babies are dying because he voted to approve 2,000-pound bomb sales to the IDF.
I think, just want to say something. I agree with everything they said, and that's yes, indeed, for all of it. One thing, and I think it'll help you relate to the situation better, is if we all take time and read about the history of Gaza, right, many years before October 7th. So that way we understand and we can relate more. Because when you understand, it helps you a lot.
I just want to add, because I think that's such a good point, that on October 6th, that was the deadliest year for Palestinians in over 20 years. So for anybody who thinks that all of a sudden this magically started on October 7th, you need to read the history.
Okay, thank you so much to our panelists. We are going to transition into questions from the audience. Just due to time and how many questions we got, we chose a couple of them. The first one being for Dr. Perlmutter. How did your testimony to the ICJ go?
It went very well. It's very professionally done. It's not, I spoke to the South African lawyers initially, and they're having it at arm's length through an American law firm that filed charges against Biden and Blinken directly. And those charges are going to be heard in the international court, or criminal court, where you file personal charges against people, whereas the ICJ is filing it against countries. And so this Washington-based justice law firm is answering the questions so that the South African troop can maintain an arm's length from all the witnesses. And so my testimony went well today. I told them the truth. I told them a painful truth. I backed it up with photographs that are geo and time stamped. I have photographic evidence of children that were shot twice, which I keep saying that doesn't happen by accident by the world's best snipers. And we talked about Tamir that I shared with you, and we talked about other evidence for genocide. We're spending more time next week talking, and every doctor who observed these things, and nurse and therapist. should reach out to them, and I can help you do that, because the truth will come out. And then things like that will help steer the narrative, because clips from that will get replayed and advanced on social media. But it did go well. It was actually my best psychotherapy session since I got back.
Great, thank you. The next question is, how do you reconcile the love-affirming atmosphere we're trying to do in here with the options we will have on the ballot in November, which seem to have no interest in all of our common humanity?
I think, while I understand the question, I think there's, I don't think we live in a democracy. Okay, I think that if you look at a lot of issues, from gun rights to women's rights to reproductive rights to all of these things, the majority of people are on one side, and what our representation is on another side. And so I think that question is really highlights an issue with a current American political system, and less so like the Palestinian question, or the question of current genocide. I think it really kind of highlights the issues that we have in our system here. But while I say that, I also understand that, the 40,000 people who are actively dying don't have time to wait. So there is some urgency to speaking out and to engaging with representatives and people in the system. It doesn't, like Dr. Perlmutter said earlier, it doesn't happen overnight. This was just to go from abolishing slavery to the civil rights was 100 years, and we still haven't achieved equality, right? So we can't expect to have things change tomorrow, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
Okay, we'll keep going. The live streaming of this genocide on social media is already so horrific. What would you say is the biggest piece that cannot be captured still through social media that we will always miss?
I think it goes back to what I was saying, like the kids that are dying from infections, like simple thing, like just if you give antibiotic to anybody, they'll just give them and they can have a chance of surviving. The drinking of people drinking from polluted water, the sewerage being all over throughout the camps, the lack of food and nutrition. I think that is not it's not we're so focused on the injuries that are coming from that. Right, there is a lot of them. We've seen waves and waves of that, but there are a lot of injuries also that could be easily preventative. There are people that are diabetic that need metformin. They can't get that. So, that could be easily prevented.
I want to add to that just a couple of things. This may be a little lengthy, I apologize. Basically, it's an ugly dynamic. If you're not dying from an injury, from being airstrike, you're dying from poor medical treatment. And if you're not dying from those both, you're dying from poor nutrition. And if you're not dying from that, you're basically dying from an infectious disease, or you're just dying from inside psychologically because of the loss of the loved ones. This genocide is specifically against children. The amount of children that I've seen injured, I want to say about 80% of the injuries that I treated were under 15 years old. That's something that's not really being repeatedly mentioned on social media as well. So as I was there, both medical mission trips, I was also involved in another organization, maybe a third or fourth one that I'm involved in. We would help transport children outside of Gaza to Egypt to seek additional medical treatment. And then from there, we'll see what country would advocate for them. So I would go in and check on those children every single day. So as I'm checking on my patients on a daily basis, I would enter, see if they need baby formula, which I have to fight to get. diapers, money, clothing, whatever it is they need, basic life need for them to survive. So I go in on a daily, and I cannot tell you that how many times I walked into ICU or walked into this patient's room and that patient was gone. And I just saw an empty bed. And this all could have been preventative.
And I'll add on the comment on children. I think maybe it's because I'm a surgeon, but we really love facts because it's very hard to argue against. And I think it was Human Rights Watch that put out this fact. They did the math that said more children have died in Gaza in 8 months, at that time, a couple months ago, in 8 months than in the past 4 years of all global conflicts combined. And that struck me. So, and that's children. And I say children because children seem to move people's hearts in a way like, do Palestinian men not deserve life? Do I not deserve life because I'm not a child? So, but that,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But I wanted to, going back to the direct question that was asked about social media, I did want to say what social media, it's very well documented that social media appeals to the worst of us. So things like bad news and horrific things that really make us angry spread 10 times faster on social media than good news. And so what I think you miss on social media, it's important. I'm not saying that it's bad in this case because we are documenting these events that are going on, the atrocities. But what I think you miss is all of the beautiful human things. Some of them I alluded to. Those are stories that you're not getting on social media. Like some of them I alluded to about the dinner that they made for us in the ICU. Or the woman, I can't remember her. Oh, I remember her name now. I won't say it. But the woman who took it upon herself at the European Gaza hospital to control whatever supplies they had. So she literally sleeps in the warehouse and to make sure that the stuff stays organized and that people can come and ask her, hey, I need some, whatever, do you have any? And she will honestly give it or control it to make sure that people have what is being donated. That's a beautiful story that they're not putting on social media. Or her little son that she was proud of who happened to get interviewed on, I don't know, Al Jazeera or CNN.
Yes.
By the way, that lady, we tried to help her. We collected donations to help her exit Egypt because they're taking a lot of money to have people escape from Gaza to Egypt, and she refused.
Yeah.
She wanted to stay with her children. I even offered to take her son, and she said, no, I want to stay here. And I want to help.
It's those stories. It's the barbers who no longer have a barber shop, but they have their little little trimmers, and they're just out in the street
Mark got a haircut by one of them, by the way.
Yeah. I didn't have hair, but
Dr. Mark got a haircut, and he looked really good.
Yeah. So it's those stories that you're not. That's why I say I wish you had the privilege to go and see it because it will change you in a way that you never thought possible.
I need another haircut by that fellow. I've got two things to add. One is the word magnitude, and the other word is psychiatric disease. The one thing that we as surgeons don't know how to measure, and we don't often pay attention to it in our private practices because we have PCPs and other people and nurses and wonderful therapists that will say, hey, listen, I think you have a bigger problem on hand here, to remind us and help us dive out of our technical world and procedural algorithms to pay attention to the spectrum of psychiatric disease that virtually affects everybody. And I read your lips, I'll hurry up. Oh. And so I myself had nightmares and still do every now and then, and I wasn't hurt. I broke a finger and lost part of a tooth there, but compared to that, it's embarrassed to bring it up. But the truth of it is the psychiatric disease burden is immeasurable, and will need attention. The suicide rate is high amongst teens. And that's not even being approached. The next thing is the magnitude of the injury. And social media can work on this. Gaza is smaller than Nagasaki during World War II. And yet, before all of us got there, the United States delivered and Israel dropped the equivalent of not just the bomb that fell on Nagasaki, which is again smaller than Gaza. It dropped that equivalent of TNT plus the equivalent of TNT that fell on Hiroshima. And Hiroshima is 4 times the size of Gaza and decimated Hiroshima. And those type of metrics need to be measured in a social media format so that people can equate what their tax dollars are going to and what level of destruction that we're actually being responsible in delivering as American taxpayers. It's my money that bought those bombs. I'm complicit. We have to be able to say to our friends, mea culpa. And the only way to get around that is to make sure that, again, through social media, that I can absolve myself of this responsibility only if I work to prevent it. I may not be able to. I didn't operate on 200 people there, but if I could stop a bomb from dropping and killing 200 more people, maybe that one letter to Tammy Duckworth will work. If I can flip one vote, that may be all that I need to do to make a huge difference. Or if I influence 5 of her voters who she finds out are not going to vote for her in her constituency unless she flips her opinion, then that may be all that's needed to save 200 lives, maybe 200,000. So the magnitude needs to be shared.
Great, thank you. That wraps it up, so I'm going to pass it over to Shane for our closing remarks.
I want to thank all of our panelists. It is inspiring to have all of you here, and I'm grateful. I truly am. And to everyone here, this started with an email to Dr. Mullah, and this was put together by an amazing team that we have. Savannah, Lacey, Matt, Myrna, Patrick, Kirby. And so I want to encourage everyone to join an organization. This is just people who work. We're very busy, and this is what we do in every single minute that we have. And so please, if you want to get involved with this, come talk to one of us. Join Free Palestine Charleston, join another organization doing this work. Show up to events and protests. Seeing all of you here is incredible. And I can't say how grateful I am enough. There are so many things that we are working on and doing. As Dr. Mullah said, there are weapons being made here. And they haven't been shipped yet, but I don't want the day to come when we hear about a child losing their life and the weapons came from right here. So I'm inspired by everyone here who takes this time and who is committed to this cause, and I want to continue that work with all of you. And I also want to encourage people to continue to donate. The PCRF is doing incredible work. There are a lot of organizations, there are GoFundMes. All of that helps. Everything that we can do to get the word out, that is what we can do here. Not all of us can go to Gaza. Not all of us can go to Palestine. But we can do stuff here. We are in the belly of the beast. The country's sending the weapons. We can make a difference. We can yell at politicians on the news. So again, thank you all. And I'm going to pass it off to Safana.
If you all got your program, if not up front, we have some of these. This is Shahid and Abdullah. This is a link to their GoFundMe. Shahid is a dear friend of one of our community members who's in Gaza right now. So she is just trying to survive. So she's just one person that if you're looking for someone who you know the money is going to go to them, this is just one person that you can donate to. So the QR code is there. Now I just wanted to give a proper thank you to our panelists. And for that, we have two people who are going to present some gifts. The first one is Anna. Anna is an organizer in Charleston, has been an organizer in Charleston for a few years, and this year responded to the call for escalating efforts for Palestinian liberation by organizing a group called Charleston Chutzpah, which is a group of local Jewish people for a free Palestine. Anna is also a dear friend, and they will be presenting the first gift.
All right. Thank you all so much for being here, all of you and all of you. Thank you. We're presenting you today first with a bouquet of palmetto roses. So if you're not from Charleston or you don't know the local history, palmetto roses are made by the Gullah Geechee community, and the Gullah community is comprised of descendants of formerly enslaved Africans who were brought here primarily from West and Central Africa, and forced to work on plantations. And now their culture really defines everything that makes the Low Country unique and special. Palmetto roses are one of the many things that Gullah folks make out of sweetgrass. So you can find sweetgrass baskets, all kinds of other things. And palmetto roses specifically are something that is sold in our markets. You often see young kids selling them, often disproportionately criminalized for doing so. So we wanted to give you each a bouquet of these palmetto roses as a symbol of fighting back against the over-criminalization of existing, but also as a symbol of connectedness to the land, and also as a symbol of resilience. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. They're so cute. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. It's really sweet.
We have one for you too, Dr. Perlmutter. We'll have to mail it to you. Dr. Perlmutter. To present our next gift, I have Myrna. Myrna is also a dear friend who has been tirelessly working with Free Palestine Charleston. She's Lebanese and has been active for Free Palestine for as long as she can remember. She's also a mother and she's an artist. Her art has been featured in the art exhibit From Charleston to Palestine hosted by Flowers for Palestine. Myrna paints heroes. She paints martyrs, their mothers, their fathers, survivors. And in the past 2 weeks, Myrna took it upon herself to make custom paintings of each of our heroes who are present today. And I recently found out Dr. Mullah is a collector of art, so I don't know if you had your Charleston one yet. So here we go. Come on. Oh my God, I love it.
Let me see, is that before or after the haircut? No, this is before the haircut.
And this is Dr. Mark. I don't know if you can see me.
Good job. Thank you. I'm honored.
We need a picture of you guys with your. Yeah, let's take some
Yes.
photographs with Myrna.
Thank you guys. Seriously, thank you so much.
Just sit down so you can see him behind you. Sit down a little. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Free Palestine. Free Palestine.
You look like you're sitting on a chair. It's invisible.
Okay.
How can I support your?
Thank you all for coming. We have
Yeah.
another 10 minutes or so, and then we'll have to clear out the room. So please take some food with you. We'll hopefully be in touch. Thank you.